That's the one you wanted. Okay, thank you. That's why Teresa does this, not me. Okay, so we're gonna call the meeting to order. We have a quorum present. The agenda was sent to all the members previous to the meeting. So we'll go forward with that. The first item is the review and approval of minutes of the last meeting on January 29th, 25. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. The only thing I have, and you don't need to change that this time, but I would appreciate if you use my full name, Van Voorst van Beest. I know it's a long name, but
Okay, say that again.
Van Voorst van Beest.
VORSD.
Yeah, and then Van Beest. It's long, but
Isn't it Theo?
in my
How
professional
many
life.
O's in it?
What?
Forrest has how many O's?
Two.
Two O's.
Oh.
VOORST.
Can you shorten that up a little bit?
No, in my,
I gotta say that with a name like Kyler Fegels, I don't have a whole lot of sympathy.
I know
I
it.
do respect.
Well, in my professional life, I went by Peter Van Voorst because it was, but then when I retired, I decided, and as an artist, I decided to use the whole thing again. So,
We'll do that.
thank you. But you don't have to change it this time. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, but,
Was it a business card thing that couldn't get them big enough to get the whole thing across in one line?
I could tell you a story on that.
Sure. Okay. So your motion is to approve as written?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other? Is there a second? All right, I'll second that. Any other discussion? All in favor? Okay. Minutes passed as submitted. Is there any public comment? There's no public here. We'll look for any select board input. Andy?
I'm certain that you have not received an invitation to talk to the select board yet about the impact fees.
I have not.
Well, Becky was out with some health issues. And he's supposed to be sending you an invitation.
Okay. I'll look for it. Okay, next item on the agenda would be to review the draft plan for fiscal year 2026. I'm going to see if I can figure out how to share my screen here. So we're doing that. Okay. So we got a lot to accomplish tonight because we need to come up with a recommendation for the budget committee. That meeting is next Monday, it's coming Monday night. But to get to that point, we need to look at a few other things. And I did make a couple of cosmetic changes to the plan. I'll point them out as we see them. So the first thing that I wanted to bring to the committee's attention is the Mallet Hall items that have not changed over the past couple of years. And as you know, we were unable to find someone that would come before the committee this year to discuss those items. And I will, I have made that known to the select board that somebody needs to be found that will do that. And then I will make that part of the presentation on Monday evening.
That's been going on for a number of months.
Yeah, it's,
Is there any reason why?
well, traditionally it had been the, as I recall, the committee chair, which was
Yeah.
John Peter, would come in, well, since he was already here, he would provide information like the department heads do. When the chair changed persons, they're saying they don't do that. And I've thrown that back to the select board and said, all right,
And they have not acted on that in any.
I've not gotten an answer on that as to who will do it. So there needs to be someone within the town or someone within that committee that takes that responsibility to do that due diligence. and provide us an update.
I think it has something to do with the staffing at the office maybe, because I mean, when I retired from that position, I made the arrangement that the guy of the committee would meet on a regular basis with the administrator, and I don't know if that happens because they have had personnel problems, I think.
Right. But, so I'll put in a plea that the select board determine where that responsibility lies and to assign somebody to do it so that we have input here. But so anyway, the best place to look at that information is on the inflation analysis. And so I'll go there now. And really, it's the mallet hall items at the top of this page. You can see for the elevators and sensors, it has not changed since 2022. The generator has not changed since 2021, and there's a question whether that should even be here. The AV equipment and boiler are new. We have those in there now. The mallet hall parking lot did not change last year. Well, it did change last year. And that was when I think John Peter pointed out that we were missing the overlay that happened like a year after it was originally done, and that information had not been passed to the committee. So anyway, we've got $142,000 of replacement costs that have not changed for a bit. And we need to determine, do we leave it as it is, which is the way the plan is set up now? Or should the committee make some adjustment just to hedge against what might be happening with those assets in terms of their replacement costs? For instance, we could just inflate them by our inflation factor. In some cases, you may have to apply that over 2 or 3 years if you wanted to do that, or let it ride. I'll open the floor to discussion on that one.
Well, the inflation factor seems to be a more safe and if there is such a thing as a safe guess at this political climate, because you have no idea what's going to happen to pricing.
Right.
And so to just make a wild guess, I think it doesn't make much sense unless you wait another year. Maybe you have an idea. So if you just use the inflation factor, I think is the safest and the more reasonable thing to do. I think you may not agree with.
This is information that the Mallet Hall Committee should be providing to this.
Right. Or, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm sounding like a spoiled child, and I can be that. Why, I mean, in a sense, we're enabling bad behavior by taking any action whatsoever. That rubs me the wrong way.
Right, but well, let me just, I agree with you. But if we take no action, or, I mean, we can take an action could be leave it as it is, because we don't have any good information to go with. We could go with Jan Peter's suggestion. Whatever we do, we need to communicate that to the budget committee and to the select board, that this is what is done, because there's been no one responsible to do this. Because it does reflect on the work that we do if we miss it by a lot. You know, if we just ignore it, then that could influence, I mean, it's not a large part of the asset schedule.
Another thing that you might want to keep in mind is that of the 1, 2, 3 of the 6 items, there's only one item that goes back to 2016, and the rest is all, I think the oldest item is 2020. So nothing is more than 4 or 5 years old.
Right. So, I mean, so we have, and I guess I bring this up because I'm concerned that we know this issue exists. If we ignore it, then we have a compromise to our plan because we have knowingly have bad data. So do we try and make the bad data a little bit better? Because we could probably eliminate, prices have gone down in that area, and replacement cost has gone down. So we could probably eliminate that. So do we try and just take a Kentucky windage guess and then say to the select board, you need to assign a responsibility for this? That's what I'm throwing out.
No, I understand perfectly, and I will go along with, I mean, there's three of us.
I appreciate your feeling about it. On the other hand, we have a select board member here, and I think the fact that they have not changed the figures has something to do with the understaffing in the office. Is that, would that be a correct assumption?
I don't think it's the office's responsibility it's the Mallet Hall Committee's responsibility to get the pricing.
Yeah, but the Mallet Hall Committee, and if they're not doing what is expected from them, then it's the board that finally will make the decision. And so I would be inclined, if we go with what I suggested, to give them a free pass or some wiggle room maybe to come up with these figures sometime.
Well, it's pretty obvious we aren't gonna get pricing for this year,
Mhm.
so I think we apply the inflation rate to it. That would be my thought for this year. Get some firm figures for next year and adjust from there. 'Cause none of these are within the next 5 to 10 years.
I'd be willing to go along with that, although I do agree with you.
I'm willing to go along with it, but I think that the Mallet Hall Committee has to be resolved. Because, I mean, you've been talking about this for 3 months.
Yeah.
And here we are. So that,
And again, you're gonna get budget figures as we do from Public Works and guy walking in off the street, I wanna buy a truck today, is the price.
Yeah, but at least with our department heads doing it, it's an informed
Right.
estimate. I'm not sure that we're as informed as they are about their assets is, because, next year we'll have another $60,000 worth of assets that need to be looked at on top of the 140 we have here now. So I'm getting I'm feeling a consensus to just take the inflation factor that we have in the plan now and apply it to the numbers that we have. And just to give you a for instance, so if you take the 65,500 for the elevator, and you inflate that from April 23, so you got 2 years worth of inflation. At 6%, that means that would go to 73,600. The $8,000 for the generator, which is 3 years ago, would become 9,500. And the parking lot, well, let's go with the 68,138, and we'll just inflate it 1 year. Becomes 72,200. So if you guys are okay, I'll go ahead and make that adjustment in the plan now before we go to the next discussion. We're good with that?
I'm fine with it.
Okay. So 7367. Calculator becomes 9,500. It becomes 72,200. Okay. All right, so now the plan that we're looking at tonight includes that adjustment. Okay, so the next item would be to review the inflation data. And if necessary, reset the inflation analysis. But we'll go back to the inflation sheet, and you can see that the items that we just adjusted have been updated here. And I just want to check. Okay. Well, just so you know, this yellow number here and this yellow number here should always be the same number. They're arrived at in two different ways, so that if we make some changes in this and those two numbers don't come together, then we just need to find out why, what asset are we including in one and not including in the other. And the reason that changes is that if we change the period of time that we're looking at, and right now this is set, so the gray column right here, it's green on the TV screen, that's the beginning year. And the current column is the ending year to determine the rate of inflation in the replacement cost. Those are chosen for demonstration purposes, as the 2019 is before the pandemic. And the January 29th, 25 is the current point in time. And the reason that is that you didn't want to pick a time during the middle of the pandemic when things were going crazy, although they still may be. It would skew the numbers. So we can look at different periods and say, all right, maybe we should only look back to 23. Pandemic is mostly over with by then, and or maybe 24. We're further away from the pandemic, but it only gives you 1 year of change in the replacement cost, and to see what that does to the calculated composite inflation rate right here, which is right now showing at 5.4%. So what are your thoughts? Do you want to see something different, or do you want to, this looks good, we'll go from here?
You set your inflation rate at 6%.
Currently in the plan at 6%.
Yeah.
And just to add one other piece of information to your brain as you think about this. We've excluded most of the fire stuff right now, which we know is inflating at about 8%. And we did that because of how screwy it makes things look when you put some of that in
There's
there.
another wrench in this too now with the uncertainty of tariffs.
And if you remember back in 20 well, 18 or not, 18 or 19, we had steel tariffs coming in and things were, things started jumping up. And so this is trying to get, that's why that was picked, to get ahead of that, to say that was normal. And what is it today? Now, doesn't mean that's right. It's
Right.
just, that's where it's picked. We could pick any time we want and
Yeah,
look at the change. So do you want to see something different just for fun? Or you're happy with this? Or, and like I said, this is just a bunch of estimates making an estimate.
yeah, well.
We being the human beings have to make the informed judgment from these estimates as to what we use. 'Cause
I would say to go with it because, I mean, you can make different estimates, but there's no reason to think why it would get any closer or better than that.
Yeah, good. And I know if you change the starting period, this number over here will change and it may go higher, it may go lower.
And the 6% inflation rate is actually, yeah, we upped that because of tariffs at the time, so.
Right, and-
Sort of, we took that into account already.
Right,
so.
and you don't have some big assets in here because they're going crazy that. But you don't want to inflate everything by the crazy public safety inflation rate. So, I,
6 is a safe bet.
an informed bet. Yeah.
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 Kyler, thoughts?
I agree. 6%.
It takes into account some of our big assets.
Right. I mean, I would have to agree. I mean, unfortunately, it's a big driver of the plan, but with the data that we're looking at, it's so hard to tell when is this gonna normalize or,
In 4 years.
Or.
Yeah.
Or
or it hasn't normalized. And
Well,
remember, we used to do the inflation rate with just
yeah,
what we felt when we came into the room without anything.
2.5%.
Yeah, 2.5%. And we did that for years. Okay. So the consensus again, that I'm hearing around the table is leave it at the 6% that we have in the plan right now.
I would, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
There's just too much uncertainty right now.
Okay. All right, so the next piece, now that we've settled that, the next piece would be to review the appropriation smoothing in years 1 through 5 and beyond. So we see how comfortable we are there, and then we can get into some votes once we get comfortable with that. So for that, we want to go over to the what if section of the plan. And you'll remember that this, in this top piece here, that's the plan as we have now set it. Let me get the little thing out of my way. Those are the numbers, the plan values of the assumptions that we've made are here. The only thing that we have not discussed up to this point is the year 5 smoothing. And if you remember, as we move this forward, we bring all the years 1 through 5 forward a year, which leaves year 5 blank. So that we'd have a place to start the discussion. I've put year 5 smoothing equal to year 4, just as a starting point. So that's something we have to determine because that influences everything after year 5. That drives it because of the inflation factor. Now, one of the things I did do, a cosmetic change, it does not change the functionality, but it'll change what you see. As you can see this this ending capital reserve balance is now shaded a color. It can be other colors depending on the criteria. But what that color indicates is a threshold. If it's more than if it's 150% of our target amount for the capital reserve balance, then it will go into this salmon color. So that's telling you years 1 through 9, without looking at any other detail, those are all more than 150% of our target. Our target for the capital reserve balance is down here in the plan. We have it set today at $300,000. That's a committee assumption that that's what our target should be. And that's 5% of the current replacement value. It grows through the inflation factor over time. You can also see this set of numbers above that showing you that in year 1, our capital reserve balance will be 367% of our target. And then 287, 325, 268. So we're calculating that, but the color just indicates on a quick glance, we're above this threshold. We can set this threshold anywhere we want, just to help us have a quick glance. So if we were to set it, just to show you, if we were to set it at 200% of our target, you can see that a couple of these years out here, the color went away, saying that we're not 200% or more above that. So that's just a cosmetic change to kind of give the board a quick look at, what's going on.
But you set it at 150% for a reason.
I had to pick a number.
You had to.
And I thought, what number would we say? If we're at above that number, maybe we should take a second look at what we're doing. I don't know if 150% is the right number, but if we were to say our capital reserve balance is 150% of what we think we need, should we take a second look and say, is our appropriation too high? Leave that money in the taxpayer's pocket rather than putting it in the town's bank account. It's just a way to get a quick glance at that. It doesn't change the numbers, but so I go back then. So I'd welcome input from the rest of the group. Is that the right threshold to kind of trigger that thought, or should it be 300%? I don't know, that was just the number I came to. I'll put it back there. So you can see that everything in the first 10 years is at least 150% of our planned
Is
target.
within that 150%.
Yeah. So everybody comfortable with that? Is that how it's working?
Yeah, well,
Would you rather have a different number there?
Play with appropriations to.
Well, and we're gonna get to that, but I just want to make sure we're all understanding that that's what that's telling us. Now, we'll have the same thing when we get into the what if, as you can see that the numbers are the same right now because that's the way we've set up the assumptions. So there are no what if numbers in there. So this is all zeros. So let me walk you into what I think would be the next step is to look at year 5 smoothing, because that number drives everything after year 5. And given that we had a $300,000 infusion into the capital reserve account from the town surplus, the question is, given the other changes we made in the plan, can we reduce our appropriation given that infusion from the surplus? So just for fun, since this is the driver for years 6 through 20, I'm going to drop in 183,000, drop this by 10,000, and there's nothing magic about that. It's just $10,000 reduction. What does that do to the plan? So you can see in years 1 through 9, we still have in the what if scenario with a 10,000 reduction there. Years 1 through 5 haven't changed a whole lot. We're still 150% or more above that. Here's where you start seeing the change, the bigger change, because now you're starting with a lower base. It's still 150% or more here.
Yeah.
We get down to year 9, we're only 143% of our target, of our planned target. If you go out here, the first problem that we see is
There.
year 17 is less than 90% of our target. So that's,
Which is a precipitous drop.
yes.
Do you-
But then we come right back. Yeah, you have some big expenditures, $780,000. Well, in these 3 years, you've got $1.8 million of expenditures. So you drop down to 66% of target, but the next year you're back up to 103.
Mhm.
Now,
17 years out.
17 years from now. And the other thing to think of is the plan really starts to get fuzzy out here because you no longer can look,
Yeah.
you know, you're only funding 4 years here. You're only looking at 4 years worth of expenditures ahead of you.
But at least it lets you know that you have to expect some big expenditures.
Right.
In that group of
Right.
years.
So this, you know, for us, this would be a group of years that we want to watch to make sure we don't get too far out of whack. So then, if you were to say, and I'm not suggesting you do this, but I'm just kind of walking you through a methodology. If you were to say, well, okay, that's not too bad of a hit to the plan. If we drop 10,000 out of this, so then the next question is, in the near term, this right here is a $9,000 increase in year 1 from last year. So we have to get, last year was, let me say it this way, last year we had a $155,000 appropriation. So from last year to year 5, we have to go from 155 to 183. If we want to take this up gradually. Or equally, you don't have to, but that's what we've always done. But if you took this up from 155 to 183, how would you do it? That would affect the near, well, affects all of it, but it'll affect the near term more because these appropriations will fill in some of the numbers here. So just for fun, if we said, let's drop it in $5,000 increments. So if this was 178 here, now we have to let the plan recalculate. We're still nothing jumping out at us here in terms of the colors that would warn us. We did another $5,000, it'd be 173. Again, we're still well over our threshold. Maybe 168. And we went to 163. So we're still not breaking the, so does that give us an opportunity to lower it even more. And that,
Well,
our plan, let's see, our plan was to raise 909,000 over 5 years. This reduces the 909 to 865. If you went from, if we did from 155 to 183. If we, so does that say maybe this could even be lower here? So if you did 180, the first thing, since that's year 5, how bad did we impact future years? And we know we had year 17 was an issue, now 17 and 18.
yeah.
But when you go from 52% to 88%, so you're still coming back and you get over to, so. So if you're still comfortable with that, and I'm not saying you should or shouldn't be, but if you went backwards again, so you now to 174. Now we're focusing in here. 168. If I did all of that correctly, in the increments of 56, 62, 68, 74, 80, that still leaves us with exceeding our minimum for the next 13 years, at least. And that gives us some issues out here that we would be very concerned about.
Yeah, I think it's easy to say it's 17 years out. But I think you have to keep an eye on that.
Oh,
Because
definitely.
before you know, you sleep yourself into a lot of trouble.
Well, and if you remember, because you were here, that when we first started this, we had this like 10 years out, we see this period where we're going to spend over $1 million.
Mhm.
And we got to be ready for that. And we've gotten through that 10 years, because we were watching it.
Right.
If we hadn't been watching it,
Yeah.
we might have had a different,
And I think in essence, that's the whole purpose of the whole exercise,
right.
really.
So that may say that while we're good in the short term, we're digging a hole out in the future, we may have trouble filling.
Yeah.
So,
And yeah, I think it's important to keep an eye on that and to actually reduce that a little bit, because I think it's very easy. And specifically for everyday operations, you say, oh, we're all right.
Yeah.
We're all right. And it goes so many years and then all of a sudden it says, oh my, why didn't they ever think of that?
right.
And
So, and I offer it here, not as an advocate for anything that I put on the screen, but as an example of the possibilities and looking for you guys to kind of suggest where are you comfortable, or where do you think the committee should be comfortable? And to be honest, I would, since the town gave us 300,000 we weren't expecting last year, I would like to see if we can cut back our planned appropriations in some way,
But,
in the short term, while maintaining our responsibility to the whole plan. So I'm perfectly willing to type in any numbers you want to see on this.
Well, I would definitely think we should be guided by the number of outlying.
Now, oh, one other thing,
Results, and even if we are getting another 300,000,
well, let me
we can
do
figure.
one other thing. That, something we have done on purpose that's influencing this. I just happened to see one of our assumptions.
Mm.
But if you look out here, the appropriation doesn't go up at all. And so we're not doing any smoothing.
past 5 years.
Well, we're not smoothing past year
No.
15. So if we were to smooth, and that would be our 6% increase. So if we were to smooth for, say, 15 years. Oh, can't do it there. Now we have committee smoothing across the entire plan. Changes how it looks. Because what's happening here in the plan that we have, the appropriation stays flat at 349, starting in year 15. And here it's continuing to increase as the plan goes forward. We do fall down here one year, but it
Well,
brings it back. So I think that's more realistic in terms of what would happen. We would
Yeah.
never let it sit there that long at a flat number.
That being the case, I think I'd be all right with the numbers that you put in the YS.
And that would mean a $1,000 increase in appropriation over last year or this year. Because we were 155 last year.
you know,
There's a lot, I mean, I've played with this, but I've never looked at these specific numbers, so I'm just as raw as you are in seeing this.
Well, in terms of kind of knee-jerk reaction, I agree with you, John Peter, that you gotta pay attention to what's out there. And scroll on over one more time if you could. I mean, you've got, under the current one ifs, you've got 1 year, 2042, where things are not looking great, but there is a specific reason,
Mhm.
you know, and then it starts climbing up, and so that looks acceptable without going crazy over, you know, what, and, you know, you got to keep an eye out in the long run, and yet at the same time, there's a
There's a
point.
lot that can happen. before
Yeah,
that.
there's a point
Right.
beyond which you can't expect to hit the mark. It's just too far out.
you know.
I just for recall, the town did give us extra money a few years ago when we had one of these situations where we're below the mark we wanted to be at. But that was within the first 10 years. We showed them that, we're not comfortable being here. We're gonna figure out how to get by, but we're not comfortable. So the town gave us a special appropriation. But this one's 17, it's year 17, not year.
Also, the first year of the pandemic, we took a
We took a $1 appropriation.
$1 appropriation.
But yeah, but if the town gives us money, we can put it towards that particular year's
Mhm.
appropriation, can't we? This is not what we did.
Well, it was in the plan at $1 and then
Yeah,
I think the town did a special thing on their side of the books and next year we got our full appropriation back again.
Yeah.
So we went down to nothing and then right back up. And that was to help with the pandemic
Yeah.
issues that went.
but you go down to nothing because all of a sudden you have that influx of money
Yeah.
that you can use, which is a good reason.
Well, no, I don't think that they gave us anything to let us go down is because we had a strong balance. And we made a proposal that said the town was in a bind for that 1 year in terms of going to town meeting and the appropriation. So we said, we're really strong in our reserve account. We could go down to 0, but we got to come right back. All the way.
Yeah.
It's not going to be, we stay down there. And the town went with that and we survived that. Now we've had the town's been, we've gotten some other windfalls from the town.
Anymore, not too many windfalls coming nowadays. You don't see any.
Don't know where Kansas is. So. So. And the other thing, we still don't have any, as far as I know, and Andy, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. There's still been no action in the investment policy in terms.
That Becky brought up Monday night, and that is on her priority list.
Okay, good.
So we may gain in interest as well.
Right, I'm using her almost 3% interest rate, and I gotta believe, she gave me what was current when I asked her back in September. But I gotta believe we're doing better than this rate. And if she can start investing when we've got over $1 million in our capital reserve,
You don't want to invest the whole.
you won't invest all of it, but you could say, you could put some of that money to better work safely. As long as you assume the US Treasury is safe. That's. Some people would argue with. Yeah. So I'm looking for suggestions as to how to change the numbers that we're currently looking at. Or decide that you like this and there's no way we're gonna do better, or what can we do? Or go back to what the original plan was.
I like your what ifs.
Yeah.
I think we're in a good position to drop that down to that level. No lower, but I like that. I feel comfortable with that.
Mm.
Let's put it that way. As a taxpayer, would I like to see it lower? Absolutely.
Right.
But
That would say that over the next, our 5-year planned appropriation has dropped $69,000 as a result of this change.
Mm.
And it leaves us with something we have to watch closely in the second half of the plan, which
Yeah.
we will do. We can't not do that.
But it doesn't make it crazy, like when you all of a sudden have the 4 years where you're going. to
Right.
yellow. It only keeps you in 1 year yellow, which is acceptable. I
Yes.
think,
Yeah.
you know.
You got time to fix that.
right.
Yeah, and when you get closer and you see that what's happening there, you can always make changes. You
Yeah, I
got
mean-
17 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, when that's out at the 10 to 12 year period, you're
Yeah.
probably gonna take a different look at it and say, I can't let that hang out there too much longer, or we just won't have time to deal with it.
I'd also like to see public works trucks last 15 to 20 years, but
Right.
not realistic.
And, you know, and we are conservative in the way we budget at Public Works and Public Safety because we plan with street prices and the competitive bidding should give us better prices. But you can't plan for at that level of detail. And hopefully the world straightens itself out.
But for this type of a thing, you ought to lean towards the conservative side.
Yeah, I agree with that.
For town budget, yeah,
I mean, I do that in my home budget.
yeah, me too.
Same here. I mean, I can't see that we can do any better with the 5-year appropriation
No, I think this is.
without really shooting ourselves in the foot down the road.
Right, and, you know, I just gotta spread this evenly. We don't have to do that. We can we can do whatever we want, is what I'm saying. And I have this is just to stimulate discussion. And I don't know if the chart shows anything here, but the chart below shows you the appropriation versus the plan. So you can see what if we've lowered the appropriation in the early years, the green bar. And then in the later years, you know, that keeps catching up and then gets above our current plan out here. But there again, you've got 17 to 20 years to try and slow that appropriation down.
Yeah.
As hard as we try, I mean, we're never gonna hit the nail squarely on the head.
The plan will never be correct.
And it would be grossly unwise to think that we could.
Yeah,
Like I said, we might do it by accident. But, you know, we're getting as close as we reasonably can.
and we've taken the mallet hall items that haven't been adjusted and we just arbitrarily adjusted them to make sure that there's coverage.
Except that it's not really arbitrary. I mean, it's.
Well,
based-
right,
Yeah,
It's an educated guess.
Yeah.
yeah, it's our educated guess from the distance we sit from the vendors that provide that service. We've also put in an inflation factor that is more than we compute because we know that there's some issues in replacement costs, particularly in public safety. So we're trying to be, I guess what I'm saying, we're trying to be conservative there. Make sure we,
Conservative, but proactive.
right,
yeah. No, I think we're all right, yeah.
They can't see changing those numbers one way or the other at this point. We get another year, well,
mhm,
maybe thinking, oh.
right. And, you know, like we did with the pandemic, we did a big uh-oh there.
Oh, I think this is okay. And plus we're living right now, for the last week, we're living such uncertain times.
Yeah,
Whether it is really hard to even guess what's. I mean, are there is he gonna do those tariffs or isn't he? And then what are they, what are tariffs gonna do to Maine? I mean, can you imagine that we get about most of our heating fuel and our fuel is coming from Canada. And most of our electricity is coming from Canada. And when in the old day, when I was working, when I was buying fuel for Shaw's, we bought millions of dollars worth of fuel and we pre-rated it in advance. But I cannot remember that I ever bought my fuel from any other outfit other than
Irving?
Irving.
Yeah.
You know, because New York and New Jersey was way more expensive. And you had all the, it had to get here, you know, it had to be trucked down here and Irving was there and they own a big portion of the state of Maine even, I think, in the woods and so forth. So, but you don't know what it's gonna do, what a tariff is gonna do and how that is gonna affect us.
Right.
So,
And so we do our sharpest work for the near term but keep our eye on the long term.
Yeah.
And you know, right now, I mean, we're very fortunate to have a very strong capital reserve account. So if the town, you know, not that we don't want it to get too high, but I think we can weather most any situation that would come to the town. And next year we get the wheeled excavator and we'll have save all kinds of money.
absolutely, yeah.
Okay. So, are you comfortable then that we've exhausted this discussion and we should move on to the votes? Yeah. Yeah. Anything else on the plan that somebody, I guess the other thing was the additional smoothing to kind of make it smooth for the entire 20-year period, which helped our situation. Okay. All right, let's move into the next section of the agenda, which would be votes. We did not change the inflation assumption, so I don't know that there needs to be a separate vote there. We've just affirmed that our original assumption set way back when was good. The next vote would be in order would be a motion for the appropriation for fiscal year 2026 in the amount of $156,000, which would be a $1,000 increase over the prior year. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion for, to make the appropriation for $156,000 for fiscal year 2026.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay. The next thing would be a vote then to,
Can I?
certainly.
Just, I'm taking notes here. Could you read that again?
oh, no. Close your eyes and read what's behind the eyelids.
Get it verbatim. I just want to get.
Motion to make the appropriation for fiscal year 2026, $156,000, basically.
Okay, thank you.
Next motion would be to accept we want to say this, set the capital asset plan for fiscal year 2026 as represented in the what if section of the plan on this night.
That's your motion.
Well, I was suggesting that the motion should be something like that.
It's, yeah, that's what, yeah,
So moved?
Now, you got.
yeah. Second, now you have to repeat that, right? That the capital asset plan for fiscal year 2026 is being adopted as it has been discussed and determined in our what if experiment of tonight.
As determined on the what if tab of this spreadsheet.
Yeah,
You got that written down.
no.
I think what we're trying to say is that and you can take whatever words you want. We're gonna accept the plan as it's currently shown on the what if tab in tonight's discussion.
The what if tab. Tonight's decision. Discussion. So you made the motion. It's
Yes.
already been made. I second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, thank you. I think that sets all we need in place for the presentation Monday night to the budget committee and the select committee, or select board. Open discussion, is there anything else to come before the committee?
That will be the gold copy for this year.
If, unless the budget committee or the select board request changes, but that'll be the, coming out of this committee, that's what we said. There's no changes, we'll make it the gold committee or the gold plan
Meeting.
in the next.
Is that this coming Monday night? Yeah,
That's why we had to meet tonight.
That's why I was so,
not last week?
yeah, that was why I was so excited about last week's meeting not being able to happen. Okay, and there's no other open discussion. I did not hear any. Next meeting is Monday, the 10th for the budget presentation. March 26th is our next regular meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
The second, all in favor? Thank you very much, everyone. And I will see if I can stop the recording.
Oh, that was interesting, you know?
You can see.